and welcome to the event today. My name is Biljana Naumovic. I'm the Managing Director of Janssen Australia and New Zealand. Let me first acknowledge the traditional owners of the country on which I'm joining from today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and recognize their continuing connection to the land, waters, and culture. I pay my respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. It is my pleasure to be opening today's proceedings to both mark World Pulmonary Hypertension Day and the launch in Australia of the PAH Patient Charter on behalf of Lung Foundation of Australia, Pulmonary Hypertension Association Australia, Scleroderma Australia, and us in Janssen. As many of you may know, Janssen's focus on the disease of PAH came with our acquisition of Actelion back in 2017, a company who led the world in development of treatments for PAH. Pulmonary hypertension is now one of our company's key therapeutic areas where our vision is to transform the disease into a long-term manageable condition that patients, you, can live a normal life. With PAH being a rare, chronic, and debilitating disease, affecting up to 150 people per million population, it is important that we use every opportunity to raise awareness. Given the current Australian population, it is estimated that up to approximately 4,000 Australians have PAH, yet approximately 50% of those are being diagnosed. Concerningly, on average, it takes about 4 years and up to 8 doctor's visits for people living with PAH to be correctly diagnosed. And the longer diagnosis takes and the treatment is delayed, it can adversely affect the health outcomes of those who live with the disease. So because of that, we in Janssen are very proud to have been involved in supporting the development of the world's first PAH Patient Charter. It sets out the standards of holistic care that anyone living with PAH should receive, including a timely and accurate diagnosis. The charter was first conceived out of a meeting in Berlin back in 2019 that included patients, patient advocacy group representatives, and healthcare professionals from the PAH community. And the PAH charter we launched today is endorsed by the Lung Foundation of Australia, Pulmonary Hypertension Association of Australia, and Scleroderma Australia. We hope that by having a document which clearly sets out the type of care those living with PAH should receive, it will improve the experience of patients, of the carers, and of healthcare professionals. And for that, we're very proud to stand here with you. So please let me now introduce our next speaker, Amanda Laurie Jones, the president of Scleroderma Australia. Off to you, Amanda.
Thanks. Welcome, everyone. So my name's Amanda Laurie Jones. I'm the president of Scleroderma Australia, but I'm also the president of Scleroderma Victoria. I sit on the chair of the board of Arts Access Victoria. I also sit on the Victorian Disability Advisory Council, reporting to Minister Donnellan, the Minister for Disability, and I also run my own business. My goodness, yes, I'm a very busy person. But for me, having a connection, with my work, so I work as a disability advocate. That's my business. I go into organisations and I assess their access and inclusion. But I also advocate. So what I'm going to talk today about is about understanding your condition and being your own advocate and thinking about how this connects to the Charter. So from a personal perspective, I've had scleroderma for a very, very long time, 35 years. Throughout that journey, it started more so, of course, as an invisible disability. As years have progressed, it's now become a visible disability. So thinking about that from the perspective of it's much easier to advocate when you actually have a physical disability rather than an invisible disability. So in learning that over the years and thinking about how do you advocate on your own behalf, I feel it comes down to three major things. But going back to in thinking about how we talk about disability in the current environment, we think about from the social model of disability. So thinking that, it's about the environment or factors that surround us that actually inhibit us from doing things. And thinking about, how do we actually take control of that and having that sense of choice and control. And I think at the core of, the Charter, it does actually talk about, patient-centred. So thinking about that choice and control model that links through to that. So how we think about the choice and control from my perspective in understanding your own condition and becoming an advocate, I think the key points are in here. I am going because it's a new document. I do apologise. I will have to read off them. Thinking about education, information and support. So thinking about, education, we as individuals have the opportunity to link into many organisations, such as the Lung Foundation, PHAA, and of course Scleroderma Australia. So there are many resources available. So it's about educating yourself, but on your own actual current condition. And again, the information part sort of goes through to, all of the wonderful resources available, but it also goes through to thinking about how you communicate with your doctor. And thinking about, communicating and bringing that into here around the choice and control model. So thinking about communicating effectively with each other, making decisions together and agreeing on a care plan that is appropriate for you. Again, for me, that means a lot because it ties back to that choice and control in thinking about the Charter. So then we go through to another highlight that I brought out into this new Charter here, support. So support's well defined in the Charter and is something we all need to make sure we have available and share in regards to supporting our members. So especially thinking about Lung Foundation and PHAA, sorry, bit of a tongue twister. And thinking that, listed within the Charter here, we've got ensuring that patients have access to self-management programs to support them to become well-informed patients, providing support for caregivers, which I think is really important as well, and supporting a holistic approach to care that includes psychological and social support, and providing patients and caregivers with information on other relevant issues, including financial support and disability rights. So again, that ties back into my core business of what I do. So all of this comes together in this Charter, and I would like to just to give a call out to Janssen, and thank you so much for putting this together, a great resource. And finally, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Felicity. I think she deserves a medal for putting this together and plus the event today. So thank you very much, Felicity, and welcome to, looking forward to working with you guys in future. That's it from me, and I'd like to hand over to Kevin Burke, which I believe is online.
Yes, thanks, Amanda. I'm here. So just welcome everybody to the launch of this Charter that's been a work in progress for a long time. Just speak to you a little bit about my story. So I'm 51 years old now. I've been living with PAH for 11 years. I was diagnosed in 2010. And it was mainly due to shortness of breath and an episode of work. But I've probably been living with PAH for a number of years previous and being treated for the wrong things, and that's something that's highlighted within the Charter that, it takes a few years to be diagnosed, and I was definitely in that bracket. It wasn't until I understood more about the disease that I realised that I'd been definitely suffering for a long time before getting the right treatment. So with early diagnosis, well, with my diagnosis, it led me to taking medications and having lots of appointments with specialists in the field of PAH, which was a bit of a challenge. I live in regional Victoria, So I have to travel a fair bit to Adelaide or Melbourne, Adelaide being the closest, which is 4.5 hour drive. So in the time up until now, I've had lots of consultation with specialists in the field, and have sort of owned the disease and speak with them regularly to make sure that I'm getting the best treatment that's available to me. It hasn't always been the case. When I was first diagnosed, I sort of squandered around life for a couple of years trying to find a purpose. And it wasn't until I found PHAA I realised that I wasn't alone with the disease, and found a great group of people and some wonderful people that I'm great friends with today. You know, and sort of worked my way up to become vice president of that association, more to raise awareness of the disease, because there is not enough awareness around pulmonary hypertension. People hear the word hypertension, they just think it's the normal hypertension that people get, and sort of pass you off and don't realise the seriousness of it. To try and raise that awareness is a challenge, you know, and I think in the charter it mentions things like raising awareness and becoming more involved in our communities, and to try and do that. So for me, I'm still on a journey. I'm about to start a new medication tomorrow, just added to the regime that I already take to help me stay alive, really. And in consultation with my specialists, I've started the journey of going down the next path, which is probably a double lung transplant. I also have a heart condition, so I'll probably have to have open heart surgery at the same time. And it's important that I have open communication with my specialists in regards to that, and ask a lot of questions, make sure I'm an active part of the decision-making process. And just an example of that is the new medication I'm going to start taking tomorrow. You know, that came as a result of one of the tests that we have to do every 6 months, which is a 6-minute walk test. So I have to walk flat out and try and pass out basically from walking. You know, and they realised that my oxygen levels were dropping too low during that test. And so they sat around and consulted as a team in Adelaide and decided that the next best thing is to try the new drug that's only recently become available on the PBS through a lot of hard work through Janssen and us as a group as well. So, you know, they rang me and told me that this is what they've decided, and would I be accepting of that. And of course, you know, after a lengthy discussion, we decided that's the best course to take in the next step of my treatment. So, you know, and I'm about to head to Melbourne and talk to the transplant team in the Alfred, just to explore that option. Probably not quite at that point yet, but it's something that's definitely down the track. The charter for me, which is a fantastic document, having read through it over the last couple of days, you know, it explains a lot what my journey has been like over the last 11 years. So early diagnosis, very important. Getting the right care at specialist centre, especially if you live in country towns, get referred to those specialist centres, get the help to get there for a start. The continued and ongoing approach by your specialist and the open communication. And then obviously the support that you need, not just for your physical health, but for your mental health as well, to make sure that you're receiving the right support, because I know I suffered mentally for a long time, and I still do. and I make sure that I'm sort of on top of that when I hit low spots. So the charter's fantastic especially for new patients. They'll be able to look at something and realise that there's an approach to getting the best care available to them within the country. So it's fantastic. I applaud everybody that's been involved, and look forward to promoting this within the communities, and hopefully, we can help some people get treatment early. So I'd just like to thank everybody for your time, and look forward to catching up with everybody. And I'll pass over to the next speaker, who will be Anne Whitaker, the CEO of PHAA and a great friend of mine. Thanks, Annie.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everybody. What a great day. I'll first give you just a little bit of background about me. And I have to read some of this because I just don't want to miss out on some important points. I have been involved with the PAH community since 1999, which was prior to the death of our son Tim. He died in 2006. And the first time we encountered this disease was in 1999 on his diagnosis. We must look at a number of different terminologies and timeframes before we can even start to make sense of PAH. And I've been working daily since 1999 to find ways to engage communities and their families and friends, and to engage this disease, and to engage the disease in the context of the devastating effects it has on young people and the old in our communities, both developing, underdeveloped countries. And I must recognise Felicity Sawford from Janssen, Sonalina Liana, for convincing me I could reduce the last 22 years into a little intro. I actually had to consult the PAH Charter to do that. So what is a community? What is a PAH community? Well, community means many things to many people. However, at its heart, community is where you have a connection to people who care about you. As a founder and volunteer CEO of PHAA, we started this organisation officially registered in 2005 by Carmel Norton, and myself and my son started the forum. So there were two separate sections. PHA Australia officially started to grow when Carmel Norton, who was a bereaved mother, her daughter died 48 hours after giving birth to her first child, and they didn't know she had PH. She had asthma, apparently, but on autopsy, pulmonary arterial hypertension came up. And then, in my case, Tim had died after 7 years, and we found each other and sat at a coffee table in Wagga, and that's where it all began. And we just looked at each other and said, what is this? What's happened to us? Where do we go from here? What can we do so other people don't end up like us? We didn't even drink the coffee. So we recognised through our own experience that information and support was hard to find, especially when your child or family member is diagnosed with a lot of rare diseases, not just PH. Our mission was to bring hope, education and understanding of this rare and often misunderstood disease to the general community, because we knew there were a lot of undiagnosed people out there. A diagnosis of PAH upends lives in the ways that are impossible to fully understand unless you've actually been on the journey yourself. And this is where the Charter does come into play. At PHAA, we've conducted research that shows that for every person diagnosed with PAH or PH, there are 18 others who are directly affected in their network or family or their close contacts. And that means they're affected to the point that they may need medical help, counselling, preparing for a death, all sorts of different things. So it's not just the patient. We believe that we support the family. There are the husbands, wives, children, parents, co-workers, friends of the person diagnosed with PAH. They are all deeply affected by this devastating disease. So here we start to branch off into our little communities that have never heard of it either. The PAH Charter states that people living with PAH should have access to holistic care and social support. Well, what is holistic care? There are many classifications, not surprisingly. The 5 basic components that I picked up from the Charter are the physical, emotional, social, spiritual and mental. Standard medical care may not always consider all of these components. Physicians may be very good at providing physical care and sometimes mental care, but are not necessarily very good at providing all the social, emotional and spiritual care you may need. This includes connection with patient advocacy and support groups such as all of ours, who understand what these people are thinking and feeling. PHAA provides advocacy, support, connection, leadership, hope and a caring community for patients, their families and friends, social and employment environments. Whether it is a community of the first-line healthcare workers who could benefit from greater understanding of the PAH to better meet your care needs, or a school community who need education to support children with PAH to learn in a safe environment. Education, understanding and empathy are deeply important in improving the outcomes of care. PAH are proud to be signatories to the PAH Charter, as we believe it represents a set of strong ideals that will underpin a new high quality of pulmonary hypertension healthcare in Australia. The Charter provides the framework for these discussions and on how we can collectively work together to improve the ways in which PH is diagnosed, treated and supported by a strong community of people who actually live with PAH themselves. Together we can raise awareness, reduce the time it takes to receive a diagnosis, lobby for improved access to world-class treatments and provide a strong community of like-minded people to support you on your PAH journey. We believe that the Lung Foundation, Scleroderma Australia, Pulmonary Hypertension Association Australia and Janssen all coming together to work as a united front and not be competitors in this world of PH, but together we can actually move forward faster and achieve the goals that the PAH Charter has set out, and also encourage our members to be a part of the Charter and help them understand it as well. So, thank you to everybody involved in this. This is just fabulous.
Thank you, Annie. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with you where I didn't nearly cry, and I'm going for tissues in a second. So I absolutely am so very grateful for you spending your time and telling us both your personal story but also the origin story of PHAA, because it's such an amazing community and we're so very proud to have you as signatories to the PAH Patient Charter. So thank you very much. Very much. I'd like to introduce now Dr. David McHale and Kristie Bailey from the Lung Foundation. Kristie's the GM for development. And whilst to this internal audience, I'm sure Dr. McHale needs no introduction. He is also a PAH expert as well as a board member for Lung Foundation Australia. Thank you both.
Thank you. So thank you for the opportunity of being here, and it's a pleasure to be here on World PH Day for this launch. As Felicity mentioned, I wear two hats here today. I'm a clinician who works in the PAH space, and I'm also a board member of the Lung Foundation, and I think it's great to see a document like this. I'll just give an opportunity for Kristie to introduce herself too.
Yes, Kristie Baird, General Manager for Development at the Lung Foundation. I am really thrilled to be here with clearly our esteemed board member, David McHale, and also Felicity and everybody from Janssen for this launch of this incredibly important patient initiative.
That's good. So I think I'm going to wear my clinician hat for a little while when we talk. I think as a clinician, we have a duty of care to listen to our patients. But not just to listen, but also to hear. And I think having worked in pulmonary hypertension for nearly 20 years now, the stories I hear from my patients about the delay in diagnosis, in the symptoms that they've had to put up with, that have been misdiagnosed, in their inability to access information, to access care to an international standard sometimes, and also to be able to explain and get supports that come naturally to many other conditions is something that has upset me along our journey. And I think this is a great first step towards trying to redress that balance. I think the PH Charter, if you look through it, you should expect to receive a timely and accurate diagnosis. We don't do that well. So we need to be out there with the medical students, we need to be out there with our GPs, to our care providers, in telling them about the delay in diagnosis and how we can expedite that for the benefits of those who are suffering from this rare but really debilitating condition. We should also expect our healthcare professionals to listen to our patients and to look at tailoring a management plan that is really looking at all aspects of their care. We have patients with connective tissue disease. I have young mothers with this condition. I have older patients who have different needs with respect to travel and so forth. And oftentimes, in the standard of care model that we have in Australia at the moment, you diagnose the condition, you provide medications, you give a little bit of information, but that holistic approach of psychological support, access to information about things like just getting on an aeroplane is just missing. And so I think this is a call to action for us to deal with that. Regular assessment, risk assessment is the paradigm of good care for long-term management of pulmonary hypertension, and yet even in pulmonary hypertension communities it's not addressed as specifically as it could. And so putting this as a framework for us to have a regular risk assessment and then allowing the patient to have appropriate access to medication and to other things that could enhance their experience, including exercise programs and so forth, is something that we need to address. And that social support aspect for both you as the patient, but also for your carers and your immediate family. And thank you, Annie, for educating me about the 18 people who are involved. I need to widen my circle of thought. That's important information for me. So I'm finding that even as a clinician who practices in this space, I can still acquire knowledge about these things, and it's important. So what does it mean to me as a clinician? I challenge any doctor who works in this space to look at their interactions with their patient group and to look at the interactions of patients with breathlessness or other symptoms, and really not take this as an affront, as we're not doing a good job, but actually take it as a call to action saying we can do better. And so I think that's really the message that I will take from this, and I will try and get through to our community. So the calls to action are what sort of really strike me. We have to diagnose earlier. So I think as a clinician, I really want to take that message to some bodies where we can improve education and do things better for the community. We need to support people better. I think the Lung Foundation can really look at advocating to government for increased resources available in this space and what we can do around funding those models. And we need to support people in their life journey with pulmonary hypertension. Treatment has come a long way from when I started in this space, and outcomes are better, but we still don't have a cure. So there's still a lot of research that needs to be done. And we still have good treatments, but things that are often started too late, and risk assessment is important in helping us use appropriate medications earlier on in the disease paradigm. So that's what it means to me, and that's with my clinician hat on. I might hand over to Kristie.
Well, I guess I sit here having heard Amanda, having heard Kevin, having heard Annie talk about the perspective from the lived experience, and I think that's really part of the value of this charter is it takes people's lived experience and puts it into a document that can be used to help people going forward. Every newly diagnosed patient will have a much clearer pathway and much clearer support in how they can deal with their condition with clinicians, with their family, with the community. And for me, that's the real value of this, that lived experience. So for every patient who is looking for awareness about a disease that's really not well known, or looking for advocacy, how are we going to get better support going forward, or looking for support. You know, Kevin talked about it quite eloquently about feeling alone and not knowing that there was a community of people around you who are experiencing the same thing. And that's what the value of this for patients, driving forward not just good quality health care in dealing with the condition, but also all of the other things that mean living a good life. So from the perspective of Lung Foundation, this is what's incredibly important. Our patient community, the consumers around us, their families, their carers, their co-workers, that support is incredibly important.
Thank you. Now we can move to the actual formal, pardon me, I need to be over here. We're going to move to the actual formal ribbon cutting ceremony for the PAH Patient Charters. So, Amanda, could I ask you to come back up with the panel? And we're going to be doing panel questions after this, so if you would be happy to stay up here after we do the ribbon cutting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll come around this way.
Fantastic. Okay.
I feel very privileged to do
Ceremonial
this. See that they stand back when I have a pair of scissors in my hand. Too funny. Okay, everyone. Thank you again to Janssen for this great resource, and looking forward to collaborating with the other organisations. Here we go.
1, 2, 3. Very nicely
There we
done.
go. Thank you.
Actually, can I give you all a copy to hold up, and we're going to put it?
Yes, please. Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'll move in. Move in.
Shall we come either side?
Yes, can you stand either side?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Charter. I like that.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Exciting times. We're going to move to a short panel discussion now, and I'm actually going to ask all of our panel members, Amanda, Kristie, David, Annie, Kevin and Biljana. And in fact, Biljana, I'm going to start throwing to you if that's okay, just to give you a heads up. But I'm wanting everybody to actually answer the same question, but from their point of view, because as you can see, we've got a really diverse range of experience, knowledge, and lived experience as much as anything else to talk about how the Charter affects people and their organisations. So if I may start. What's the main issue or concern that the PAH Patient Charter addresses for you or for your organisation? And perhaps, Biljana, you might like to answer first.
Oh, thank you, Felicity. Can I start by saying that this was overwhelming? I was really enjoying listening into everybody and listening into the stories. And I guess that's what it addresses for me. For the first time, we have something that is holistic. We have something that we can start discussions with, be it us in Janssen supporting the education or making sure that the right therapy is brought with equitable access to everybody, or with carers, or with healthcare professionals. I love what Annie said, the holistic support. What does holistic mean? I think it's a really great start for bringing the highest quality of care to the patients with PAH. That's what it means for me.
Thank you. Fantastic. Annie, would you like to answer this one next? Because I know you and I have had many discussions about what the Charter is and what does it mean for PHAA.
Well, for PHAA, we sort of feel a little bit like the poor cousins, I suppose, because we don't have a means of income and everything's volunteer-based. So we're depending on very sick people to run our organisation, and we are isolated all over the country, and we do it all online. We don't have an office or anything like that. So it's going to pull us together a lot tighter than we were. And the other thing that I think's really important is that the 3 organisations that signed off on this charter are learning to work together and focus on the same things instead of someone going on this pathway, someone going on that pathway. If we can actually come together as a united front to address an issue that's happening at the time and work together and not feel like that, oh, we better do this because, you know, somebody else might get funding for that, or, oh, we better get in quick, but actually work as a community ourselves, the three of us plus Janssen. That's what it means to me and our committee, for sure.
Thanks, Annie. Fantastic. Amanda, would you like to, as the head of another patient organisation, and I know you're obviously, your corporate body is a lot of people living with scleroderma.
Absolutely. We're in the same scenario as Annie, so, reiterating that, Scleroderma Australia and the state associations, we're all volunteers. We don't get much funding, and for me and our organisation as well, really looking forward to collaborating, working together, and really sort of, I suppose, working on the awareness piece. I think that's something that's been, especially with scleroderma, not been as done as well as it could have. So I think that's probably one of the key pieces for us.
Thank you. I appreciate the insight. Kevin, it's a PAH Patient Charter. What do you think this addresses for you?
Oh, well, as a patient, there's lots of things. Everything, from start to finish, is very important. And I think, obviously, David touched on it, and I think education within the medical community is important to help with early diagnosis. I'd like to see a future where if somebody presents to their local GP, regardless of where they live in the country, that all avenues of those symptoms are explored and not just thrown into the easy diagnosis basket, which seems to be the case at the moment. It's really hard to get that early diagnosis, and you have to go through a lot of hurdles before you get there. And I think the other one, for me, is obviously getting people referred to a specialist centre as soon as possible when they are diagnosed with PAH. We see a lot of cases where people are not referred to a specialist centre straight away, and with the help of PHAA, and I've seen it with Annie and Joan, who do a lot of great work. They help those people get to the right centres to get the right treatment. And if they're not, then that pathway takes longer again. And obviously, then the mental side of things, and I know I've touched on it. To get support for that as well, because it's a lifestyle change, and just to add to, my story, I had a great job back in 2010. I had to quit straight away, and it took me a while, but I'm on a disability pension now and sort of work part-time, thankfully, with my brother who owns a business. But, it's a lifestyle change. So there's lots of things that go on for a patient, and the charter, sort of covers all those bases. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the insights, isn't it? Krista, I know before we kicked off today, you and I were talking about the importance of holistic care, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what do you think is the main issue that the Charter addresses from a Lung Foundation perspective?
Absolutely. It's that holistic approach, so that for a person with PAH, it's more than just about diagnosis and treatment and quality health care. It's also about their approach to life. It's about work. It's about travel. It's about their family. It's about all of those supports that they need to get to navigate a good quality life with PAH. And so for us, that is really taking it back to the core of what a patient needs beyond just health care into that psychosocial support.
Thank you. It's really important, isn't it, that we knit all of those things together in a really cohesive way. David, may I let you have the last word from a clinician perspective, perhaps? Put your doctor hat on.
I'm happy to, and I guess there's a couple of things I want to say. Listening to the stories today has again reinvigorated me for the passion for trying to make the outcomes for patients and their families better. I think, something you mentioned there, Kevin, we don't actually have appropriately trained social workers or psychologists who understand this space well enough to assist in a tailored manner, which is part of that holistic care. I think we've made advances with regards to medications, and that's wonderful. But the other aspects of the holistic care model are things that we still need to advocate for. I think one thing when we produce a document like this is many people involved see it as the end of that journey. Don't rest on your laurels. Let this be the start of improving the care for patients and their families, and let this be a stepping stone to something that's bigger, that provides probably an international model of care that others would be proud of, that we can achieve in Australia. So let's work together to achieve that. With my Lung Foundation hat on, I would advocate for all of the patient support groups that are available and peer support, which is really critical to understanding this condition. And so I think we should all work towards that common goal and use this as a stepping stone, but not just rest on the laurels of this.
Thank you. And I think that's a really good call to action. There's a real, risk that when something takes a long time to bring to fruition, as the PAH Patient Charter has, and it's been a labour of love, but I think there's a risk there that we think, hey, job done. And I cannot echo everybody's sentiments more that, for me, this is the beginning of the next phase of how we better manage, better diagnose and manage PAH in Australia. And I think we've definitely got the right minds in the room and the right hearts, I think, involved here as well. So thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry. Nope. In that case, that is almost the end of our formal proceedings, and I'm going to pass to Biljana to formally close out our session. But before I do that, may I give my heartfelt thanks to everybody's involvement in the room, online, and everybody watching the live stream. It's been a really, I think, amazing and heartwarming coming together of minds and also of action that we're going to take forward out of today. So thank you. And Biljana, if I can pass to you for the final word.
Thank you so much, Felicity. All I can say now that we came to the end is thank you for today. And I cannot close it better than David already did. So this is beautiful that we're together as a group, as people who want to change the PAH holistically, from the diagnosis to the care for the environment and the communities around us. But this is just the beginning. From here, we are committed to making seriously a difference into how we treat, how we bring equity everywhere equally, like Kevin said, and how we make sure that those 4,000 patients that exist in Australia get properly diagnosed and properly supported. So in that, Janssen will be a proud partner of all the associations and all the patient organizations that exist in Australia. Thank you.